Hello. I am the real-life fake wizard. Has anyone noticed the Clippy Profile Pictures popping up everywhere? Do you know what that's about? Rossmann made a video calling viewers to action to change their profile pictures to a Clippy if they're unhappy with the, quote, enshittification of online platforms such as invasive AI moderation, erosion of data privacy, and corporate dominance by entities like Google, Microsoft, and countless others. Clippy is meant to represent resistance to the ridiculous corporate overreach we are experiencing today, especially in the tech sector. But we see an abundance of nauseating corporate overreach in every business sector around the world right now. It's not just tech, it's not just entertainment like we talk about here on this channel. It is in food, it is in housing, it's in agriculture, it's in cars, it's in healthcare, it's in pharma, it's in insurance. Good God, corporate overreach, which we will define as companies exceeding ethical, legal, and/or societal boundaries to maximize profits at the expense of the customer base, often leads to exploitation, inequality, and long-term harm for buyers. And it's in everything. The Clippy movement is making waves on the internet all over the world because people are fed up. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired of all those business sectors I just named. If we look at gaming and entertainment, we saw a serious consumer-centric movement in the Stop Killing Games initiative just a few weeks ago. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the internet advocating that, yes, gamers are sick and tired of entertainment corporations being able to terminate already purchased games when said corporations stop seeing maximum profits. If you were an EU or UK resident, you had the ability to sign a petition to get the EU and UK governments to intervene in these anti-consumer corporate practices. And if you weren't in either of those countries, you were still charged with talking about it, because your words might reach someone in those countries, and then those people could sign that petition. As an American, talking about the Stop Killing Games movement was like being one of the standby Pokemon in Pokemon 2000. Lugia, why are all those Pokemon down there? They're useless. What can they do to help? They are not sure. Corporate overreach, as described within the Clippy movement, is actually part of the same conversation that I've been having here through my videos with greedflation. You know, companies selling you less but demanding more from you. Or really, the simpler way to say this is companies are artificially raising prices for customers while providing a zero increased value. For example, did you know that during the pandemic, US food industry billionaires gained $382 billion in wealth, while food prices jumped 33.6%? Yes, that's right. At a time where the media scared the world into believing we were all going to die, the world's corporations looked at us all and said, hey, the world's a little messy right now. We need to raise prices to offset the chaos of the shutdowns. And then, with those prices raised, we all kept buying things. So those companies, even with their stock prices going up and down, were reporting record profits. And because we showed that even when the world is shut down, we'll keep buying, the prices never returned to center. Prices, not just on food, but for everything everywhere, went up and never came back down. And this is happening in every industry, not just food. Companies are mass-producing products and finding new ways to cut corners, per se, delivering less but charging more. And I'm willing to make the argument that this game keycard nonsense Nintendo has been pushing is absolutely part of greedflation. Alright, so what are game keycards? Okay, when you buy a normal Switch 2 cartridge, the game is fully loaded on the cartridge. So when a game installs, that game is installing straight from the cartridge you bought. Game key cards are digitally physical access keys that allow you to download the game over the internet. Once installed, the physical cartridge is still required to play the game, just like a normal cartridge. But regardless, you still needed the internet to download the initial game. Now, obviously, if you care about physical media preservation, this is a big problem. We were promised a decade ago that by moving to a digital access marketplace, games were going to get cheaper and more accessible. But now we've gotten to a point where you're going to GameStop, not to buy the game itself, but an access key to download said game. The more digital-only things become, the less access we actually have. This isn't new, by the way. Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft have been sneaking this in for years. While it was less than an engaging game, Avowed had this issue at the beginning of 2025. You could spend $100 on the Avowed Steelbook only to open it and discover a download key and no disc inside. So none of this is new. Companies are selling you less, but still asking for the same amount of money or more. But for us here, the game keycard thing is not new. We've been talking about this for a long time, and while the consumerism piece is important, I want to talk more about the importance of physical media. Right now, the Nintendo Online Store for the 3DS and the Wii U are entirely offline. You cannot make any new purchases of digital goods on either console. You can still download things that you initially bought when they were available years ago, but nothing new. Not only can you not purchase Fire Emblem Awakening digitally, you also cannot buy the DLC today. The only way to access this media is by using access points on the internet, of which Nintendo routinely drops a nuclear bomb of lawyers upon one or many of these access points, making them harder and harder to find. This is just one example. Should these Switch 2 game keycards take on validity through sales numbers, that would embolden Nintendo and companies like it to make more products like it, finding new ways to cut corners on delivering new media goods. Well, what happens in 20 years when the servers truly do go offline? What happens when those 3DS purchases that you did get while the store was active ceases to be accessible at all? In 20 or 30 years, who is to say that those game keycards remain active? Nintendo hasn't made any promises to keep servers alive. The Switch 2 is new today. It will not be forever. You know, it's one thing for an old Game Boy game to stop working. The battery could have run dry, or, like me, you dropped Pokemon Silver in the toilet, reducing its lifespan. Those are actually fixable issues. To some extent. Batteries can be replaced. Damaged games could sometimes be salvaged. Wear and tear breakdown of old games is expected, and there are mitigations for this now. What about game keycards? Or Xbox Game Pass only games? Or digital only games? PC gamers don't seem to care too much, do they? Everything on PC is digital only now. There aren't necessarily physical discs for PC games anymore. Is this a serious issue? Is media and game accessibility important? Is media preservation important? To answer these questions and more, we are going to the Long Island Retro Games Expo to ask some retro gamers and find out. The Long Island Retro Gaming Expo is New York's annual convention dedicated to celebrating the history and culture of video games. Fittingly held inside the historic Cradle of Aviation Museum in Garden City, Long Island, this multi-day event brings together gamers of all generations to celebrate the history of video games, but also its future. And here we find the greatest game of all, the ATM. Only some of us are good at actually playing this game. Going into this event and this particular video, we thought it was going to be like a regular Comic-Con for gaming or maybe like a gaming swap meet. It's neither. This event, the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, is what I can only describe as a temporary video game museum built into an air and space museum. I am entirely, completely blown away by how incredible this expo was. For every 3 steps taken, there was a new station outfit with a CRT television and some form of retro game system, complete with a new game and controllers. There were video game relics on display here that would have been considered myth or legend on Reddit forums. And I'm not glazing this event just cuz. Like, this isn't a sponsorship or anything like that. In fact, hey, Long Island Retro guys, your marketing sucks. Your marketing is actually embarrassing considering how incredible your event is and considering how expensive it is for you to acquire and fix all of these old games, TVs, and consoles. Seeing the console dev toolkits, the legacy artwork, and original arcade games you guys have is worth the price of admission alone. You need to tell people that you're there and what you have. If you tell them, nerds will come. But okay, let's back up here. What we're really after is, well, why? Why host an event like this? Why does preserving all these old games really matter? Let's ask one of the event's leadership why media preservation is important to them.
My name is Mike Staub. I'm one of the museum coordinators here for Long Island Retro Gaming. I think we need to understand the importance of physical media preservation. Because I think a lot of folks, convenience is a huge factor, right? Whether you're, streaming something on Netflix or you're downloading something or not even downloading, right? Now with these kind of game streaming services. While that's great and it's convenient, we have to understand that those games could all go away. We've seen games delisted. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was gone for 10 years. If you didn't have it, you didn't have it. Marvel vs. Capcom went away for a long time. Playing these games on either original hardware or some degree of hardware and having a physical cart and doing all that stuff, because these are, in my opinion, they're not relics, they're not artifacts, but they're kind of they're just a representation. It's like owning a record. So I think the goal here is, to understand the importance of physical media preservation so that we don't lose it. And it could be anything. It could be ephemera. It could be pamphlets and magazines and all that stuff, because it's all part of the history of the soul. And I'm a huge supporter of physical media.
Okay, and like I said earlier, this place has developer toolkits, original test consoles, original artwork, original games. What's the process of getting all this stuff look like?
A lot of this stuff comes from incredible people that are either guests of the show or they donate different pieces for show here. And a lot of these are bought by our team. You got to be in it to win it. So you got to know where to look for it. You got to go out there. You got to look at collections. You got to look to see what people are unloading or want to get rid of. And we want to give it a good home. So we have wonderful people on our team who will clean stuff up. They will fix things. They will find TVs. They will do what they can to make this all work so that we can have more and better stuff every year.
That is intense and requires a lot of money and time to track down heaps of old plastic that, I don't know, can't we just run the ROMs on our phones now? Why does tracking down all these old games really matter? Is preservation required at this scale? Here, are there tangible differences in real experiences by collecting relics of the past?
My name's Eric. I'm the resident Pokemon professor, and this is the little PokeLab section where we recreate old Pokemon events and give them out to the actual old carts. So the original Mew distribution, Celebi, the Mystery Mew for Gen 3, the Eon ticket, and a host of others. And I basically sit here at this table, and at certain times during the convention, I give away Pokemon to people. And for some of the DS games, I had a friend who used to be a manager at a GameStop, and they're supposed to send back those DS carts, and he never sent them back, and so I bought them, and I use those.
There's been a conversation that we've been having with a lot of people here about the preservation of media.
Correct.
And looking around at this, how important is preservation of media to you?
Honestly, I think it's incredibly important, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this, is because there are so many of these events that were just flash in the pan, they only had them for a weekend, or it was only at this random convention, or it only hit 17 states, and you never had a chance to do them when you were a kid. So why not try and bring it to more people? And to me, that's preservation, is getting to experience it again. Maybe some of it's not exact legitimate hardware. Maybe it's not done the exact way Nintendo would have done it, but it's more about making people experience what they could have or weren't born for, which makes me feel really old, but
My friends, I am a Pokemon fan. I have been since I was a child. I did not know that this Pokemon Lab event was happening at this expo. I could have gotten a whole bunch of the legitimate original distribution mystery gift Pokemon. To a Pokemon fan like myself, these types of collectibles are, well, in this case, priceless. To have the originals of some of these 15, 20, 25-year-old games is incredible, not just for history's sake, but for the fact some of us are still playing these old games today.
I thought that this would be an event that had more cosplay to it, and I'm realizing, no, these are more like just normal people. So we fit in perfectly here.
You know, while we're here, these folks have insights on physical media and game preservation. I wonder if they have any opinions on the Switch 2 game key cards.
Yeah, I'm not happy with those. Once the servers go down, those carts are useless hunks of plastic. Like, you can't play a game off of them. You can't download the game when the server's eventually down in 20 years. So for me, no, I won't be buying game key cards. I'll be getting straight physical ones where I can, and probably having to bite the bullet and buying just digital ones at some point.
I know it's all third-party games, and I know it's about profit and about cutting into profits because Nintendo has their carts are proprietary. So I know it's expensive to buy them, and they're not big enough, and this the thing. It's hard. It's a hard thing because on one scale, I'm like, I understand why a company wouldn't want to cut into their margins, but on the other side, it's like, well, what do we have here, right? It's like, you don't have the game in the cart, and I got to download it, and that's just the key, so it's kind of weird.
I'm Darren Hupke. I run Pixels and Polygons, my little self-made gaming empires. Yeah, out of convenience, I do love a good digital download, something that kind of like I can just be at home and still participate and enjoy. But sometimes I double dip. You know, if it's something I enjoy and personally want to invest in, I will buy something physical to have as more of a memento or a treasure or something to have on my shelf to be reminded by. I think it's important from an access standpoint that it's available as easily as it can be, but ensuring that the original core idea is also available and still is that's the dynamic. That's the tough thing. I don't want a remake or a re-release of something that waters down or ruins that original experience. I'd still like to have access to the original essence and original DNA of what made something special.
Now that's an interesting direction. When we look at physical games versus digital games, those digital listings can be updated, changed, removed, or adapted at any time by the publishers. Think of this like how George Lucas kept going back and making changes to Star Wars. In Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader did not yell "no" before throwing Palpy down the reactor shaft. And if we look at games right now, we're seeing an influx of remasterings taking place, where companies are taking old games from previous generations and buffing them up to have more modernized graphics. But along the way, the original version of those games are being delisted and replaced. Games like Dark Souls, The Last of Us, GTA 5, and some other Sony games for sure, have lost their original games in lieu of the remastered editions. Of course, if you have the physical discs or purchased the original downloads, you should still have access to that original content, but the point remains. Your accessibility to the original media is now convoluted. And really, it's in the name of sales and profits. If the original baseline Horizon Zero Dawn was selling for $20, that would reduce the number of people willing to buy the remastered version for $50, or the complete edition with all the DLC for $40. But this is not really that important, right? Nobody really cares about Horizon Zero Dawn anyway, and everyone who wants to play Dark Souls already has. Are there any other concerns on digital versus physical access?
Yeah, Fake Wizard. My name is Luis Aguas Vivas, and I am a video games critic. You can find my work on NPR, Debug Magazine, Ars Technica, a bunch of other places.
What are your thoughts on the game key cards?
I think it's horrible. It's weird because the way it was sold, it was presented as a way. It's like, we weren't necessarily sure what that meant. And then when you actually start seeing, it's like, oh, this gives you the permission to download the game. It almost feels even worse than just buying it digitally. At the very least, it's definitely anti-consumer. And I'll say one thing that's actually not talked about enough. Benjamin Edwards, who's a researcher out of Australia, he wrote a book called Digital Games After Climate Change. And he's come up with some stuff that actually digital downloaded games, specifically just digital games as opposed to stating them as like physical releases, might actually be even worse for the environment.
Well, that sounds like news to me. Is digital gaming hurting the environment? That's certainly a new one. How does that make any sense? According to Dr. Benjamin Abraham, researcher out of Australia who published Digital Games After Climate Change, Dr. Abraham found that the global video games industry was emitting 15 million tons of CO2 of direct carbon emissions per year just in game development by using high-powered computers and servers. 15 million tons is what the entire country of Slovenia emits per year. Now, again, this is just on game developers alone, and it is an estimate. This does not account for the gamers who are playing the games. Abraham discusses that cloud computing for games, such as services like Xbox's Game Pass, rely on remote data centers that consume enormous electricity for processing and transmitting high-resolution gameplay. Abraham highlights that this shifts the energy burden from local hardware to centralized servers, resulting in significantly higher overall energy use. Estimated to 24 million tons of CO2 emissions, comparable to 5 million cars or 85 million refrigerators. Well, there are lots of points to consider here now, aren't there? And there's a lot of points I don't have access to in Dr. Abraham's research because, well, I'm not buying a $100 textbook that's from 2022 that is filled with emission estimates. And that's no disrespect to the doctor here. It's just research like this should be free and accessible, especially since it becomes outdated the moment the book was printed. Moreover, yes, data centers burn a lot of electricity. Gamers have higher electricity bills because PCs and gaming burns a lot of juice. But then we do need to consider that downloading games, streaming games, and streaming in general would burn more energy than if you were to play a game natively off a disc, or a cartridge, or a file.
You know, I keep wondering, why do people keep looking at me like that? You know, we're here, there's a bunch of nerds here, I'm one of the nerds. Why are people looking at me like I have two heads? And then I remembered, I'm dressed like a wizard.
You know, we opened this video talking about Clippy, and I can't help but feel we've jumped around a lot. How did we go from Clippy to media preservation? And why does it matter? Well, because a lot of the cool things that you've seen appear in this video, like those old games and those old experiences, don't exist without media preservation. Nintendo and companies like it don't want you to own anything. They don't really care for any of that kind of preservation. That's part of the corporate overreach and greedflation issues. They don't want you to have any kind of control on the products that you buy. They also want to nickel and dime every single penny out of you with never-ending subscriptions and pay-to-play products. And it really isn't just Nintendo. It's all of the modern-day corporations. Have you heard of this Lumen device? You know how people are into different types of diets and stuff? Well, apparently, if you blow into this Lumen thing, it tells you if you are in ketosis or not. I bought one of these. It was $300 US. Do you know that even after buying this piece of plastic for $300, you're also expected to pay $19 per month to continue using the damn thing? Like, that's bullshit. I canceled the subscription because, well, frankly, it gives super false readings, and then you gotta pay monthly on top of it to use their app. DJI, as lots of creators are discussing right now, you know you could go to Best Buy today, purchase a DJI camera, and when you take it out of the box, you are required to scan a QR code to sign up for a DJI account. And as others keep pointing out, where is that data stored? DJI is a Chinese company. Is all of your data being stored on Chinese servers? As if they don't already know everything about you and your life at this point? Why is this necessary? Why can't the device just work and we decide on our own if we want a warranty or DJI verification on our own time? Did you know that the excuse for the Switch 2 game key cards is that it makes it cheaper for publishers to ship games for the Switch 2. Yeah, at the expense of buyers not really owning their games anymore. Everywhere you look, and there have been lots of examples here, we find corporation after corporation expressing new ways to get more out of you but deliver a little less each time. And the only way that they can keep getting away with this is if you keep reinforcing it by buying from them. Every Switch 2 game keycard you buy emboldens them. Every avowed special edition for $100 emboldens them. Every time they raise the prices of Netflix or HBO Max or Disney Plus and you stay subscribed, it emboldens them. Every advertisement you watch emboldens them to run more and more ads. The only real solutions in front of you are to stop buying from mega corporations and to instead support competition for smaller businesses. We're doing that. We're jumping in the ring building fakeportal.com. It's a website to help indie developers get discoverability, and it's free for gamers and developers. It's the most I can do right now, but I think that's what it comes down to, you know? We've got these Long Island retro guys chasing down mythical Pokemon event cartridges over there with the hopes of preserving pieces of gaming history. Then you've got us over here trying to get gamers to start playing more indie games to support competition. And now, I look to you. What are you doing? If you're upset with how corporations are trying to screw us in every way for every product and service we use, it's time to start doing something. Maybe it's as small as telling a friend about how bad things are. I only request you really inform yourself before you start telling the friends. Or maybe it's joining on with somebody else and helping them make something new. Maybe, perhaps, it is you yourself going out and learning how to make things, finding ways to express your creativity. They hate that, you know. Companies hate it when you express yourself because it means you're critically thinking, and they don't want you thinking. When you're thinking, you're less likely to be buying. And when you're less likely to buy, the chances increase of convincing someone else to start thinking too. My friends, the future looks bleak at times, and sometimes it seems a little hopeless. But I don't think so. If you look around, and I mean really look around, there are plenty of things worth fighting for. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire, and for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't liked the video yet, like the video.